Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here, and today I have decided that I shall be talking about the 2D Super Mario games. I've decided that I'm going to be talking about all sorts of elements of the franchise, including the history, the art style, and even, well, most obviously, many of my personal thoughts on the games. So let's go back. Obviously the first 2D Mario game, we obviously had Mario Brothers, which was an arcade game, like the one screen at the time arcade games. That's where it all started. But Mario went obviously ridiculously mainstream in the United States and Japan, for example, when the NES was released, and then they released Super Mario Brothers on the system. Obviously the game is amazing, it's bloody revolutionary, and it's just so fun to play. Much like most of the 2D Mario games from that era. But if you look, I think the first one came out in Japan in 1985, up until Super Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy in 1992. All the releases from that time period are epic adventures. Like, each of those games are all so unique. All of them are completely different. They all feature unique art styles, new gameplay tropes. They're just all brilliant stand-apart games. Especially for us Westerners, for example, as obviously the Japanese Super Mario Brothers 2 looks exactly the same as the first Super Mario Brothers game, whereas we got a reskin Doki Doki Panic instead, didn't we? But I'm sure you all know about that annoying little factoid, since every YouTuber loves to talk about that one for some reason. So we won't be going on about it any longer. Either way, in the West, every single one of our Super Mario Brothers games were really diverse and unique. So first you got Super Mario Brothers, obviously that's the original 2D side-scrolling platformer, and then you get Mario Brothers 2, which is obviously the reskin Doki Doki Panic, which has completely different mechanics from the first game. You can play as Princess Toadstool. Yes, I said Princess Toadstool and not Peach. Luigi, Toad, and all of those characters controlled differently. And obviously everything's changed up. Actually, the power-ups are different. The level layouts are completely different. Instead of just going from left to right, in many occasions you end up going up as well, or even down, if I recall. Like in the desert levels, you actually dig downwards, and sometimes you got beanstalks and just keep climbing vertically up throughout the level, and you pick up and throw things as well instead of just jumping on enemies' heads. So very different. Then you get Super Mario Brothers 3 after that, which again is bloody ridiculous. Like, that game for the NES, it pushed the system to its limits. It's a bloody beautiful game. In a way, it's quite similar to the first Mario Brothers game, but literally improves on every single element of it. Like, new art style again, it looks bloody fantastic, the graphics. Again, much more power up. So you've got the return of the mushroom, the star, the bloody fire flower, and then you've got all others, haven't you? Like the frog suit and the tanuki suit and all stuff like that as well. So you've got loads of bloody power ups. They introduced maps to the series as well, so you could literally go around on the map and go back and play levels you've already completed, which was cool as well. And on top of that, loads of secret levels, which you didn't get in the first two games. So you've got loads of secret levels. So yes, it was a less linear experience in some ways, and it just built on everything that the first game did and just done it much better. And then we got the Super Nintendo, didn't we? We got Mario World, which was fantastic too. Again, it was a lot like, yeah, it's completely different. A new art style was introduced, more new power-ups, another big world map. It just felt like a very different game. And obviously with the introduction of 16-bit graphics, it just looks so much more impressive than Mario Bros. 3. So far, out of those four games, they're all completely different and all equally brilliant in my opinion. And then over on the Game Boy as well, you've got even more bloody going on. Super Mario Land, it introduces a different story to the other games. You're going up against different enemies. It handles in some ways the same as the first Mario game, but then it has shoot 'em up levels and stuff like that. So it really, like I said, it really does mix it up, and that's what was so good about Mario back then. Is like you had constant changes to each iteration of the series, and then you had Super Mario Land 2, 6 golden coins as well, which was, again, it was great. For a Game Boy game, it was such a huge leap from the first Mario Land game. Like if you coloured it in, it would look like a good NES game, I suppose. So yes, and a different story. Again, you're going up against Wario instead of Bowser, which is nice as well. Again, brand new power-ups, Rabbit Hat, blah blah blah. So there you've got 6 Mario games, all completely different from each other, all very refreshing to play. And for that reason, I fell in love with the series. Like every game is different, it's unique, it's Mario, isn't it? It's one of the greatest 2D side-scrolling games of all time, one of the greatest series of all time, full stop. So yes, they carried on after that, and they decided, I think, they didn't want things to get stale, which is obvious, so they did change up things a little bit. So with Super Mario Land 3, they had Wario Land, which was also a great game, but it didn't really feel like a Mario game, I should say, because they changed up the mechanics too much. Again, with Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, the same thing happened. It's not a Mario game, it's a Yoshi game, which again has become a series in its own right too. So again, those two are great games, but I don't really think of them as Mario games because the mechanics are too different. And then after that, we entered the sad period of gaming where they would only shove 3D games down our necks for a good bloody 10 years, which was bloody annoying. Like, how depressing was that when we could really only get 3D games? They're just not as good as 2D, are they? Well, particularly back then. Like, the 16-bit generation, they brought 2D gaming to its peak. It was bloody great, wasn't it? And then we had to start all over again with 3D and look at the ugly polygons on the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation, and then we carried on having ugly polygons on the PlayStation 2, etc. And through all that period, we didn't get any more Mario games. We had to wait 13 bloody years in between Mario Land 2 and New Super Mario Bros. And when that game came out in 2005, obviously I was over the moon. I'd finally got 2D Mario back, and it felt like it would probably be gone forever by that point. It had literally been gone for that long that it felt like it was never going to make a return. We'd moved on to boring 3D games. But yes, it was back, and I did get a lot of fun out of New Super Mario Bros. My only complaint about it at the time, I suppose, was it did feel like a bit of a retread at times, like more than the other games in the series. Like, they didn't introduce any new characters like what they did with the majority of games. And most of the worlds in it looked like it was inspired from other games rather than trying to get its own identity. Obviously it was in like pseudo 3D for the first time, which was cool. So that was nice to see a 2D Mario game in kind of, how would you look at it, done with polygons, I suppose. So yes, that was cool, but again, it kind of felt like a love letter to the original series. So I was happy with that, I suppose. It's 2005, we've gone 13 years without a Mario game. So sure, you need to retread the old games to introduce, obviously, new fans to the genre. But after that, this is where it gets a little bit more upsetting. Because after that, for some reason, they decided to make every bloody 2D Mario game look exactly the same as the next. Like, why did they do that? Every Mario game used to feel fresh and unique. Then suddenly, they decided to make every single one of them look exactly the same. Maybe with slightly shinier, more polished graphics, but still essentially the same art style, which isn't what Mario's was ever about, in my opinion. So yes, then we got New Super Mario Bros. Wii, which looked more polished. And I suppose they did bring some new elements in, like it was multiplayer, like you could play with 4 characters on the screen at the same time for the first time, if I recall. But ultimately, graphically, it still looked the same. So it still kind of felt like you was playing the same game on the DS, kind of like a DLC pack, I suppose. That's probably a good comparison. But it did have shinier graphics, but that's just not good enough for me, personally. And then after that, on the 3DS, we got New Super Mario Bros. 2. Again, what just introduced collecting loads of coins. That's all it brought to the table. Again, like the previous 2 games, the worlds look exactly the same. You know, bloody, I don't know, deserts, ice world, lava world, etc. All the same stuff. Nothing new. And then we got the bloody Wii U released. And then the bloody cheek to release another game that looked exactly the same. Like Mario Brothers Wii U, I think it was called. Which was, again, it looked exactly the same as the other games in the series. And ridiculously, that was one of the main launch titles for the Wii U. Like, could you be any more uninspiring than that? Like releasing your unique selling game, like the game you've like marketed as the main game released on the platform at launch. It looks the same as a game you could bloody get on the Wii. So what was the bloody point in that? What did we get after that? It's arguable whether the next one was even a game in its own right, but it did get a standalone release, which I have. So I suppose it was Luigi U, which then took the piss even more because it literally was Mario on the Wii, the first Mario Wii U game with different levels, I suppose. So by that point, they really were like taking the piss. So how many is that? New Super Mario Brothers, New Super Mario Brothers 2, New Super Mario Brothers Wii, New Super Mario Brothers Wii U, Luigi Wii U. 5 games which are all exactly the same as each other. Yet the first 6 Mario games are all completely different. Like, explain that. Like, talk about laziness. Like, no wonder I've got bored with the 2D Mario series. After that, we got Mario Maker, which I must say was very amusing at first. It was fun to make your own levels, and it was fun to play other people's levels. But it was novel. It was a novel. I'm not getting my words right out. It had a novelty factor to it, and that was it. It was fun playing homemade levels on an official Mario game for the first time. But after that, it wasn't long before it became like playing the worst ever Mario game, because suddenly you realised you wasn't playing games made by top game designers like Miyamoto, etc. And instead we was playing games designed by a 10-year-old. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a drop off. So you've gone from Miyamoto levels to having to play levels designed by a 10-year-old. You see the drop off in quality there? Like, what is that about? So yes, Mario Maker, it was fun for a little while, but then you start to realise that again you're playing levels which you're literally wasting your time even bothering with. Like, remember, most of the levels on that game were either really boring or they were just levels that were made to troll you. Like, they made them like ridiculously hard for the sake of being ridiculously hard. So yes, it wasn't much fun, that game, and then it must have sold really well, and then they just made another one which was pretty much identical again on the 3DS. So yeah, you got 2 Mario Maker games. So I think that's 5 New Super Mario Brothers games and 2 Mario Maker games. I suppose it was really cool with the Mario Maker games as well. We got to see the old art style once again from Mario World, Mario Brothers 3 and Super Mario Brothers. That was cool. That was very cool. But again, why have we not received a new art style for Mario since 2005? Like, that's unprecedented in the series. Why have we had exactly the same bloody art style for 12 years? Like, come on, Nintendo. Like, I would be so much more inspired to play Mario games if you went back to your old ways and they just put a little bit of effort into diversity in the series. Like, come on, let's have some new enemies, let's have some new baddies, let's have completely new art styles, as I said. Like, why could we not have, I don't know, one that looks more like, what's a good way of putting it? Just a completely flat, cartoony looking Mario game instead of those ugly, strange polygons they have in the series. Or a cel-shaded Mario game. That's another way they could do it. There's millions of 2D art styles they could use. Well, millions may be a bit of an exaggeration, but there are certainly a lot of different art styles they could use. And an element as small as that would really change the gameplay experience, because you would be more engaged looking at the screen, wouldn't you? Because you'd be looking at new things. Instead of looking at the same, what would you call them? Recycled assets over and over again, we'd actually have something new to look at. Like, that'd be so much more entertaining, wouldn't it? Like, it's just, why do they have to make every single game look and feel exactly the same? They've never done it with the 3D Mario games, really, have they? Each one of those has innovated and felt different from the next. Sure, some of them cross over, well, I suppose that a tiny little bit. Like, you obviously got Mario Galaxy and Mario Galaxy 2, and you got, what's it called? Mario 3D Land and Mario 3D World. But come on, that's like sequels. That's not as bad. I don't think there's anything wrong with making a sequel to a game, but making 5 to 7 games that feel the same. Like, come on. Give us something fresh and new. Like, please, make Mario great again. Between 1985 and 1992, they was creatively on fire. All those games just looked and felt so bloody different. They didn't just serve us up the same bloody meal over and over again. And to be honest, Nintendo aren't even normally guilty of this crime. We expect it from scumbags like Ubisoft and EA, etc. Yuck. Activision. Ugh. Like with their Call of Duty games and Assassin's Creed. But Mario, don't do that to our bloody Mario. They haven't done it to Zelda, have they? They spend bloody years making those Zelda games. So why are they doing it to our 2D Mario? 2D Mario's always been better than 3D Mario anyway. So it's such a shame that it gets this horrible recycled treatment rather than the same polish they give to 3D games. Like, let's be honest, Mario bloody Odyssey looks fantastic. Like, that's the first Switch game I'm actually really excited about. Well, that's a lie again, actually. I was excited about the Zelda game on the Switch. I just wasn't a fan. Wasn't for me, really. Too open worldy. But yes, I'm digressing again. We're talking about the Mario series, and yes, 2D Mario. It's given me so much fun in the early stages of my life, and it was very, very sad to see it depart from the world for 13 years. But its resurrection has not been quite the same as its original incarnation. I just wish the games were just a little bit more different and switched things up a little bit. So if Nintendo are to release a 2D Mario game on the Switch in the future, which obviously they will, I would bloody love to see a new art style. Instead of seeing that new Super Mario Brothers art style recycled over and over again. And that's amusing too, isn't it, that they call it new Super Mario Brothers and make every game look exactly the same. Maybe I am the one who's moaning about this and I'm being pedantic, but I can't feel any other way. So I would be curious to know what all of you at home feel about the classic Mario games and the new Super Mario Bros. Series. Are you uninspired as myself, or do you feel they introduce enough new mechanics in each entry to keep you interested? Because if they release another bloody new Super Mario Bros. Game, I certainly shall not be adding it to my collection. Well, not unless I can get it for like £1 in 5 years' time or something from, I don't know, someone who's selling their copy so they can buy some drugs or something. That's how I buy many games for my collection. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you soon in a couple of days when I release my next video. Cheerio!